Alright, so before I started, I just wanted to say that I downloaded this template offline and I thought it was really cute. I thought it was perfect for my presentation and it had Shakespeare on it. So I got that from Slides Go. I use that with my middle school students when we do slides sometimes, depending on what I'm covering, but I thought it was cute. Alright, so the first thing that I was going to talk about is the literature inspiration behind Shakespeare's Othello. I think it's important that we know where Shakespeare might have drawn from, gotten inspiration from, so that he could write this play, because it's got a lot of similarities in the texts themselves. So Shakespeare's play was written in 1603 and is actually called Othello, the Moor of Venice. And I'll get to what a Moor is later, because it was something that I was not aware of. It's thought to be based on an Italian short story called Un Capitano Moro. And forgive me if I pronounced that wrong. It was published in 1565 by somebody named Cynthia. And so I had a couple of questions on this slide. What was that original story based on? What happened in that story? And how are the two similar? All right, so Giovanni Battista Giraldi. He is the Italian author who wrote poems, stories, and prose, and he wrote Un Capitano Moro. He went by the nickname Cinthio, which also appeared written like Cynthius, Cintio, and Cenzio. Not sure where he got that nickname from. I don't know if maybe perhaps Giovanni or something was pronounced a little bit differently, and that's where he got Cynthio. But that is what most people refer to him as. They refer to him as Cynthio. So Un Capitano is written in 10 sections over several years. And the story that we think Shakespeare drew off of is called Desdemona and the Moor, and is thought to have been the inspiration for Othello. So before we get into how they're similar, I wanted to talk about what is a Moor exactly. So we learned early on that Othello is black, as he is referred to numerous times as being dark or black. And so my first example I was going to read to you is from Act 1, Scene 1, line 97 on page 13. And it says, "Even now, very now, an old black ram is tupping your white ewe. Arise, arise." So, right off the bat, they're referring to him as a black ram, and he's taking away the innocence of a white lamb. And I think that's important, the way that they depict him right off the bat. Sets the pace for the entire play. So a Moor is essentially denoting a character who is black, and it comes from the Italian word moro, which is what is in the original text by Cynthia. So Moro in Italian means dark brown and is also used to describe someone who is Muslim. They use this word to primarily refer to African natives. And so during the Middle Ages, the term Moors was predominantly applied to the Muslim inhabitants of the Iberian Peninsula, Sicily, Sardinia, and several other places in that area. The Moors were initially known as the indigenous, I can't say this word, Maghreban Berbers, and the name was later used to describe Arabs. And so during the Middle Ages and the early modern period, the term Moor was applied to Arabs, North African Berbers, and European Muslims. All right, Cynthia versus Shakespeare. So in Cynthia's story, the only character that is given a name, that is referred to by their name, is Desdemona. And so all the other characters in the play, from Shakespeare's play, all the other characters in Cynthia's book are referred to by their title and not their name. And so Cynthia's story tells the story of Desdemona and a Moorish captain. And so I wanted to talk about the names here. We have Moro is Othello. Desdemona with an I is Desdemona. Ensign is Iago. Ensign's young wife is Amelia. And Corporal is Cassio. All right, in Cynthia's version, Desdemona falls in love with the Moorish captain because of his valor and his accomplishments. Despite the advice of her family, she marries him anyway, and the Moor is made commander of the Venetian army, and he and Desdemona sail to Cyprus with Ensign's wife and a corporal. So they sail to Cyprus with Iago, essentially, Emilia, and Cassio. In the original story, Ensign is in love with Desdemona, but she rejects him. And this is his motivation for making the Moor believe that Desdemona is cheating on him. And he leads the Moor to believe that she has been cheating with the corporal, which is very similar to Shakespeare's version. Just like the play, the Moor is shown a handkerchief that's found at Corporal's house, and the handkerchief is significant and special to Desdemona, so therefore it seemed like the evidence is legit. So the Moor, of course, is angry and upset, and he bribes Ensign to kill the corporal. Ensign does not kill the corporal. He wounds him, and that is all. But together, Ensign and the Moor scheme to kill Desdemona. And the way that they want to kill Desdemona is by beating her with a stocking full of sand and covering it up by saying that the ceiling fell through. I think that's pretty brutal and kind of crazy to think about. A lot different than just smothering her with a pillow. After they kill her, they turn on each other. And the Moor is tortured, exiled, and killed by Desdemona's relatives. And then Ensign continues his life of crime and scheming, and eventually is caught for a different crime. He's tortured, and then he dies as a result of this torture. So while the story is very similar to Shakespeare's Othello, the characters are a little bit different. And one interesting difference between the two is the ambiguity of character motives. We don't really know why Iago causes problems for Othello. I feel like it's left up for interpretation. But I also thought perhaps it just represents the racist attitudes of the time period. Perhaps it's saying, this is what's going on, this is what's happening. But it's not clear. We're not sure. So, race and Othello. Much like today, Othello represents a time in which racial and political tensions were high. So, during the 17th century, there were political and racial tensions that were happening between Europeans and non-Europeans. Some argue that Shakespeare wrote this play to appeal to James I. James I apparently had some interest in Turkish customs. Othello was written in 1603, and the time when this play was written, blacks were not yet slaves. However, the tensions between races were high. In 1601, for example, Queen Elizabeth signed a decree that banned blacks from England. And then as a result of this, many of them were deported, and they coined it as a fear of overpopulation. But in reality, the black people were considered as inferior, and so they were the ones who were deported first. Supposedly, Queen Elizabeth also complained of black citizens as early as 1596, which really solidifies the racist attitudes that were beginning to arise during this time period. What's interesting about Shakespeare's play is that Othello, being a black character, is depicted as having Christian values, honor, and a civilized mindset, which kind of goes against the preconceived notion and racist attitudes towards black citizens at the time. So it's kind of groundbreaking in that way. So this conflicts with the common attitudes towards black during the time, and I can't imagine what the audience was feeling when they watched this, given the tensions that were going on. All right, blackness in the 16th century. Since I teach English and we talk about connotation and denotation, I thought that this was really interesting. With my students, a lot of times we talk about words and how what it means to me might be different than what it means to you, and how our experiences give meanings to words. So I thought that this was going to be something that was interesting. So to further this idea of racist attitudes, I found an article that discussed the Oxford Dictionary meaning for the word black from even back before the 16th century. So according to the article, the definition for black was deeply stained with dirt, soiled, dirty, foul, having dark or deadly purposes, malignant, pertaining to or involving death, deadly, baneful, disastrous, sinister, iniquitous, atrocious, horrible, wicked, indicating disgraces, censure, liability to punishment, which is a heavy and negative definition. And so I feel like that just encapsulates all of the attitudes towards black at that time. Black, not just in people, but black in general. If that's the definition for the word black, I feel like that goes hand in hand with the attitudes toward black people. So Othello's blackness is most apparent in the story in the way that the characters respond and treat him. Obviously, they treat him differently. They have racist remarks and Desdemona's father doesn't want her to be with him, and it's just there's a lot of racist tension in that play. How is this play still relevant today? Obviously, this play deals with themes of racism and discrimination, and so this play is still relevant because obviously we still have race and division in our world, and we still have these negative attitudes towards otherness, which is a concept that a lot of authors over the years have written about and used in their works. And we still see prejudiced attitudes and biases in today's time. And I think it's really interesting to see that in 1601, there was racist attitudes towards black people in their society. And here we are, 2022, and we still have racist attitudes in our society. And I think that's crazy that it has gone on for this long. And we've been mistreating people for this long. That's insane to me. All right. Since I'm an English teacher, I also like to talk about the name meanings. I know that Shakespeare's names are usually ironic or telling of the character's traits, and so I wanted to look up the name meanings from Othello, just a few of them. So Othello means wealth and prosperous, which kind of contradicts the attitudes toward black people at the time. I think Shakespeare probably intended that on purpose. Desdemona means ill-starred, unlucky, misery, ill-fated, which I think fits absolutely perfect for her character. Iago is a form of Jacob, means supplanter or one who follows. And supplanter means to supersede someone else, especially by force or treachery, which I think is perfect for him as well. Emilia means competitor or rival, and Cassio means empty, hollow, or vain. All right, so there are 4 movie adaptations. There's a 1965 version, which is kind of controversial. It has Laurence Olivier as Othello, and he is a white man playing a black character. And so he uses blackface to be Othello. There's lots of controversy over that, and I don't really understand why they would do that. I guess in 1965 things were different, but the concept that they used a white person to play Othello is kind of crazy to think about. In 1990, they did a movie adaptation, and then in 1995, they did a movie with Lawrence Fishburne as Othello. Lawrence Fishburne is Morpheus in The Matrix, and so that's what I think of when I see him. And then in 2001, they came out with a movie called O. And it's like a teen movie with Julia Stiles. And I'm going to show you the movie trailer for that particular one. Only because I feel like it's interesting to see a modern, 2001's not really modern anymore, but a modern version of Othello. And just from the trailer, see what you think about how they portrayed the characters.
I didn't think you were going to make it.
Oh, come on now. You know I can't beat Magnolia tomorrow, and I'll see my good luck charm first.
His name is Odin James, but everyone calls him old. A star player in love with the most popular girl in school.
This year's unanimous choice for most valuable player, Mr. Odin James.
I love you.
Love too. But nothing comes between two people's passion
I love him like my own son.
like one person's jealousy.
He's all alone here. We're his family.
Sure, Bob.
I rebound and shoot. I play guard, forward, power forward. You name the position, I play.
Maybe we could pretend for a while, you know?
That is the sweetest thing I've ever heard.
The plan I've come up with is flawless. We're gonna break him up. You trust Mike?
What's up, man? Why you tripping?
Just watch your girl, bro. I mean, she and Mike spend an awful lot of time together.
You never used to go out with Mike or anything like that, right?
Michael, he's like my best friend.
I thought I was your best friend.
Somebody say something to you?
Watch her. They're not just gonna come clean.
Look, is she know me or not?
I don't know if it's true or not, but Mike told me that him and Desi were together last night. I don't know what
You never give out no love behind my back now, would you?
What? You're the only person I've ever been with. And if you want to be with me, don't ever talk to me like that again, ever.
What is going on with Odin?
I'll be all right, Duke.
I'd be better than all right, son.
If he comes at me again, I swear I'll kill him.
I'm sorry.
Desi was going behind my back. I could deal with that. But all this wondering you got me going through?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Why don't you just forget about her, man?
If I love that girl. Well, I got played.
What are you talking about? Stop it, man.
Yo, it's in my head up. Now somebody here knows the truth. Somebody needs to tell the truth.
From here on out, I say nothing.
I still got your
All right, so that is the modern take on Othello, which is interesting to say the least. I've never seen that movie, but I think it would be interesting to see the similarities or differences between the play. All right, and then lastly, the last thing I wanted to talk about was how I, as a teacher, might implement Othello into my classroom, how I would teach it, the strategies that I would use. So middle schoolers and high schoolers do not like to read Shakespeare. They're very reluctant to approach it because of the language. So here's some ways that I would approach Shakespeare with my students. And I don't know that I would teach Othello to them, but I know that we do like Midsummer's Night's Dream in middle school, and then they did Romeo and Juliet in 9th grade. So if I were to teach Othello, here's what I would use. I use something called Lit Charts, and Lit Charts essentially is a website that has like study information and has a lot of things that they can use to help them as they go. They has the plot summary, has a summary of each act and each scene, has all of the themes, and provide some information on how those themes are prevalent in the literary work. Has quotes that they can access, has a list of main characters and will give information about them, and will go over the symbols and what they represent. I've used Lit Charts with a book that I read with my 8th graders, and it is an easy website to use, and they seem to enjoy it. The next thing that I use is No Fear Shakespeare. I'm sure you've heard of No Fear Shakespeare. I used it when I was in high school. We had the No Fear Shakespeare books for Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet. So this is No Fear Shakespeare online. And it has the original text and it has the modern text beside it so that they can translate it and see the difference, which is super helpful in understanding what's being said. And then lastly, Course Hero. I have used Course Hero in the past for other stuff, and I think that Course Hero videos are good. It gives them a little bit of an extra visual and cartoon form, which makes it a little bit more interesting for them to watch as well. So I'm going to show you one video. It's 2 minutes long for Act 1, Scene 1. It's just a summary.
Act 1, Scene 1 of Othello opens on a street in Venice. Rodrigo, who's been courting Desdemona, is talking to Iago, who's been taking his money and promising to help win her over. Iago has just informed him that Othello, his commanding officer, has just eloped with Desdemona. Rodrigo is outraged, and Iago confides in him that he hates the Moor for promoting Michael Cassio to lieutenant ahead of him. We find out that it's late at night, and they're in front of Desdemona's house. Iago reassures Rodrigo that they will work together to get back at Othello. Together, they shout at Brabantio, Desdemona's father, using sexually suggestive, racist language to warn him his daughter has run away. Brabantio comes to the window and is outraged at such wild accusations until he checks and finds her gone. Iago leaves before his identity is revealed so that he can stay in Othello's good graces. Brabantio raises a search party and Rodrigo goes along. The opening scene establishes the setting and initial conflict of the play, as well as the characters who will drive its action. Beginning in the wake of Othello and Desdemona's elopement, Shakespeare creates strong forward momentum as characters react to this precipitating event. This relationship between Othello, the dark-skinned outsider, and Desdemona, the desirable young Venetian woman, is at the center of the drama. The setting of Act 1, Venice, is crucial. Only in such a cosmopolitan city could a Moor risk such a marriage. Iago is characterized from the very beginning as a resourceful villain. He gulls Rodrigo into doing his dirty work, and he fools Othello into believing he's his most honest, loyal follower. Perhaps most intriguing is Iago's insistence that he's only leading people to follow their natural inclination. Iago's method of villainy is also revealed in this scene. He appeals to different people by feigning loyalty or by framing himself as a trusted friend and confidant. He discovers what motivates them and leverages it for his own ends. For example, he commiserates with Rodrigo's outrage and envy by explaining that he too has been wronged by Othello. He appeals to Brabantio's paternalism and racial prejudice, comparing Othello to an animal and using the crudest language to cause Brabantio to visualize Othello and Desdemona having sex.
Alright, and so course hero videos are good. They just give a little visual and would be something good to pair with the reading of each scene. Like I said, I might not teach Othello to 8th graders, but Othello might be appropriate for high school students. But I could approach any Shakespeare play using these things. This is what I would do if I was teaching it to my students. And that is all that I have. If you have any questions, you can ask or we can discuss it. Thank you.